What's up, y'all? So if you've watched our other videos, you've probably heard me talk quite a bit about the pros and cons of living in different areas here in Southwest Florida. And we've shown you a ton of incredible neighborhoods. So today, I want to talk to you about why you might not want to move here to Southwest Florida. I know, I'm a real estate agent and I make money helping people buy homes, and we are one of the top relocation teams helping people to relocate here to Southwest Florida. But we also pride ourselves in being real with people. So today, we're going to talk about the 8 big reasons why you might not, or why you might want to think twice about moving here to Southwest Florida. Make sure you watch the whole video because you don't want to miss one of these reasons and then end up being unhappy because it was the one that bothers you. And then give us a call so we can talk about it and make sure that we help you find the perfect spot in paradise if you decide this is still the place you want to come. All right, so number 8 is the weather. I know you're shaking your head saying, what is this guy talking about, right? Because the weather is why everyone wants to move to Southwest Florida, isn't it? And yes, we're dropping this video in March and the weather is incredible right now. Lows in the 60s, highs in the 70s, sometimes up into the low 80s, and relatively low humidity. Kind of like Minnesota in August, right? That's not the weather I'm talking about though. That is the December through April weather, and those 5 months are the dream weather and why people move to Southwest Florida. What I'm talking about is the midpoint of the year, the summer months, when the weather can be pretty brutal. July, August, and September are the worst, with highs averaging 90, and it barely cools off beyond the high 70s at night. It's a tropical climate, so in the summer, you also get high humidity and lots of rain, 3 to 5 days a week most weeks during those summer months. So if heat and humidity and those warm summer rains are not your thing, then Southwest Florida may not be your spot, or at least not year-round. You may decide you'd rather do the snowbird thing like a lot of people do, and have a place here in Southwest Florida for the winter and spring, and then do the summer and fall back up north. What do you think? Feel free to drop your opinions of the weather in the comments. Now, number 7, if you're anything like my wife, this is a much, much bigger deal than the weather. It's the bugs. Along with the warmth and moisture and humidity comes a long growing season for everything. Plants grow all year round, and so do the bugs. They tend to be bigger here. This is actually number 1 on my wife's list. She cannot stand bugs. It is literally in our wedding vows that I am responsible for taking care of any bugs that we find. They don't go dormant here. They grow all year. They eat all year. They're around all year. One particularly irritating bug you'll run into are fire ants. They're a huge, small problem. So always watch where you're walking because their mounds can easily be confused with just a small pile of dirt, and you won't feel them until they start biting, and once they do, watch out because it hurts. And not just right then, but for days and sometimes weeks after. So be careful when you're walking around in flip-flops or barefoot especially. You always have to watch where you're walking because even in shoes, if you end up on a fire ant hill, you will not be happy. They'll get up your legs, they'll still bite you. Mosquitoes are another particularly common annoyance here. Now I will say that people tell me mosquitoes are crazy down here, but in my personal experience, there are mosquitoes everywhere. I don't know, maybe they're just attracted to me, but I get eaten alive by mosquitoes everywhere I go. I did as a kid growing up in Arizona, which Phoenix is a super crazy dry climate, and I still got eaten up every summer there. Same thing happens here in Florida. So just become a shareholder in your favorite bug spray brand and buy it in bulk. Bugs are also a big reason for so many people having those screened-in pool areas that you see in all the videos. The screens help to keep the bugs out. It's a pool cage or screened-in lanai or balcony, whatever. But is something like that, having it screened in, is that going to be a must for you? Let me know. So number 6 is smaller cities. Southwest Florida is made up of a bunch of small cities and towns. None of them are really that big in terms of population. In fact, the largest city population-wise is Cape Coral, and the population in Cape Coral is only about 250,000 people. Most of the others are somewhere in the 50 to 80,000 range. So if you're from a big city and you're looking for those big city amenities and activities like multiple events going on every single night of the week, professional sporting events, college sporting events, concerts, shows, museums, stuff like that happening everywhere all the time, you're not going to find that in Southwest Florida unless you're willing to drive a bit. What I mean is there might be something in Fort Myers tonight and something in Naples tomorrow, and then maybe something in Estero or Port Charlotte on Wednesday. And if you're into the four main professional sports, you will need to be willing to drive to Tampa or Miami to catch a Major League Baseball, basketball, football, or even hockey. Yes, I know, Florida, but we do actually have some pretty good hockey teams. We also have lots of spring training baseball and minor league baseball teams. We also have minor league hockey and minor league soccer teams. But if you want to catch MLB, MLS, NBA, NHL, or NFL games in person, you're going to have to drive to Tampa or Miami, which is between 1 and 3 hours depending on where you're headed to and where you have chosen to make your home in Southwest Florida. So if you want something like that, you're going to have to be willing to explore the entire region for them rather than just sticking in the small town that you chose as home. Now, if you're looking for live music, we have tons of that. You won't find a lot of the big name shows, but we get live music you can find pretty much any town, most nights of the week. There's a lot of amazing local bands and cool spots to hang out at. There are little city centers everywhere with restaurants, bars, and shopping. And there's stuff happening, but in most cases, you're just gonna have to drive a little bit to get to it because there aren't many places that are super walkable, which we'll talk about later. Now, number 5, that quite frankly scares the crap out of a lot of people is hurricanes. Hurricanes are definitely a thing here. They happen and they are a big deal when they do. And it is weather, so there isn't much we can do about it other than prepare. And they aren't just a Southwest Florida thing, they really affect the entire state and actually a pretty big part of the country. Because you can have hurricanes anywhere along the Gulf Coast and anywhere along the entire East Coast as well. But they do tend to hit Florida more because we're basically just a big finger sticking out into the water. And it's where most of the storms come from, is that warm water from the east. So when the storms come through, it really doesn't matter a ton where it actually makes landfall because it affects everywhere. Of course, yes, there is likely to be more damage where it specifically hits than anywhere else because these storms are so large that they tend to impact just a much bigger portion of the state, if not the whole state, pretty significantly. Sometimes they go across the state, sometimes they ride up one coast or the other. At the end of the day, the important thing to know is you should always take every storm seriously and prepare. Even if the last one didn't seem like that big of a deal to you, just because the next one could be. And the really nice thing about hurricanes compared to other types of natural disasters is we do at least get a bit of a heads up when a hurricane's coming. We know days, and in many cases now, up to a week in advance. So you've got time to prepare and get out of town if you want to. It's not like tornadoes in the Midwest that pop out of storms instantly, or wildfires that can spark from lightning from any random storm, or even just some idiot who throws a cigarette butt out of a car window or doesn't put out their campfire. And we've gotten much better at learning how to deal with hurricanes. That is why insurance rates on newer homes are so much lower than on the older homes. And those newer homes are so much more popular these days than they used to be, because those newer homes are built to the latest building codes, which have stronger wind speed resistance built into them. This means they're significantly less likely to have any major damage from that wind. They also tend to be built up higher above sea level, making them less likely to have damage from any flooding as well that might occur either from significant rainfall or from storm surge. So my suggestion is, if you decide to move here, take storm planning into account from the very start by factoring it into your home search and search for an area, and then don't skimp on the insurance. Cheapest is not always the best in that case. So make sure your home comes with, or that you are prepared to add the proper storm equipment, and that you know how and are capable of using it, or that you have someone who can help you prepare when needed. And if you can afford it, plan to leave for a last-minute vacation in the event of a storm is headed your way. I know that isn't doable for everyone, and jobs, schools, and pets can all cause additional complications when the time comes, but if it's possible, it's always best to just get out of town for a little bit. In most cases, if you've prepared properly, the worst part of living through a hurricane, if you stay, is not having electricity to run your AC for a few days, up to a week, or occasionally 2 after the storm has passed, because remember, these storms come most often during the summer. So no electricity in the summer in Florida is not good. Now, are you totally freaked out and out on Florida? If not, give us a call if you've got other questions or you want more information on storms. All right, so number 4 is friendly people. I know, I said this is a list of negative things, and to some people, friendly neighbors and friendly people actually are a negative thing. It seems crazy when you hear me say it, but it is a problem for some people if you don't like friendly people and you don't like friendly neighbors. If you don't like your neighbors driving down the street, waving hi to you, if you don't want to go out to your mailbox to grab the mail and one of your neighbors happens to be driving by and stops to talk to you, and now you're stuck in a conversation for 15 minutes out in the middle of the street. If that's not your thing, Southwest Florida is probably not the place for you. That's what people do in the South. They're friendly. They will give you the shirt off their back if they see you need help. I see it all the time driving through communities and even in my own neighborhood. And I'm not in a super tight-knit, gated community like many people are. But even in my neighborhood, where most of my neighbors are on property somewhere between a half acre and an acre and a half, you still drive down the street at 6:30 in the evening and you'll see a half dozen people sitting in a driveway in lawn chairs having a drink and hanging out. If you go through many of the gated communities, you'll see similar situations, only it'll be 2 or 3 dozen people sitting in somebody's driveway with the lawn chairs. You'll have kids riding bikes up and down the street, or running around at one of the houses, throwing a baseball, frisbee, or playing with the dogs. I mean, the neighborhoods and the people in the neighborhoods tend to come together and be very friendly. And not everyone likes that, but it's what we do here in Southwest Florida because most people are from somewhere else. Now, we know some people prefer their own space, so if you're one of those, this may not be the spot for you. Or at least let me know when we talk so I can make sure that we find you some land away from everyone else so your neighbors aren't bothering you. That is doable too. Now, a lot of times I hear people say, oh, I've got these nosy neighbors, they're crazy, they're always in my business, they're always asking questions about what we're doing, they always want to know what I'm up to. And the truth is, they're probably just trying to be friendly. But that's not for everyone. I can't tell you how many times I've walked the dog in the evening and it's typically a 20-minute walk, and I'll be walking down the street and some of the neighbors are hanging out, having a beer, leaning on the tailgate of the truck or whatever, and they'll stop me and say hi, and the next thing I know, an hour and a half or 2 hours later, I'm getting a phone call from my wife saying, did you get hit by a car? What's going on? Where are you? Why are you not home yet? That is the reality of Southwest Florida in most of the neighborhoods that you will find. You're going to have friendly neighbors. So if that's not your thing, maybe Southwest Florida is not your place. What do you think? Drop it in the comments. Is that going to bother you? Number 3. This one has become a relatively new topic that we've really only heard a lot of complaints about significantly over the last few years. And that is property taxes. Many people now, especially people relocating here, are freaking out about their property taxes after they move into their new homes. People are getting surprised by the taxes because most of the time, they're assuming that the taxes they see that the current owners are paying when they're looking on popular real estate sites are the same as what they will be paying once they buy the home and move into it. Let me be clear, this is not the case. I don't know if those of you who have run into this already are not using realtors to buy your home or what's going on, but for the record, when you buy a home here in Florida, the taxes are not going to stay the same as they were for the previous owner. I'll explain why. There are laws in place that help current homeowners, especially for primary residences, keep their property taxes artificially low. So what some of those are, first of all, you've got the biggest one that most people know about is the homestead exemption, which will reduce the assessed value of your home by up to $50,000 if it is your primary residence and you register it as such. Second law is the Save Our Homes law. This one puts a limit on the amount that your ad valorem taxes can increase each year. Not everyone knows this, but it actually applies to every home, not just primary residences. However, there are different caps depending on if it is your primary residence or not. So, if your new home is going to be your primary residence, your ad valorem, yes, there's that word again, and I'll explain what it means in a minute, but ad valorem taxes cannot increase more than 3% per year. Now, if your new home is not going to be your primary residence, then that cap is 10% per year. There are also additional exemptions for disabled military veterans and for senior citizens. Now, what happens is when you buy the home, those exemptions reset with the transfer of ownership. So the taxes become based on the current assessed value now, rather than the assessed value that the previous owner started with, which was when they purchased the home. So now do you see how over years of ownership, the property taxes that you see the current owner is paying could be substantially lower than what you're going to pay? If they bought that house 10 years ago and the assessed value at the time was $200,000, but now you're buying it with an assessed value of $400,000, you can expect that those ad valorem taxes will be roughly double what the current owner is paying. Now, these laws will help you keep your taxes artificially low once you own a home here, but it is not going to stop the county from adjusting your taxes up to the correct current amount first. So, you just heard me say ad valorem taxes a bunch of times, and most of you probably either breezed right over it or heard it but have no clue what it means, right? I didn't know either until I got into real estate and started researching this stuff. But basically, it refers to the taxes that are based on the assessed value of your home. You may not have looked at your property tax bill closely before, unless, of course, you have lived in Texas. I say this because I've heard that this is a thing where everyone in Texas disputes their property tax bill every year there, so they look at it regularly. But everyone else, I don't know anybody else that does. But there's a bunch of different taxes that you pay each year on your property tax bill. And in Florida, some of them are based on the assessed value of the property, which is basically what the county tax assessor says your home is worth, which those are the ad valorem taxes. And some are just a flat fee per parcel, which are non-ad valorem taxes. Examples of ad valorem taxes are going to be like the general revenue, schools, police, mosquito control. Yes, that is a thing here. And sometimes fire. And examples of non-ad valorem taxes are sewer, trash, also sometimes fire, utility expansion fees, and special development district fees. Now, I'm not going to go any further down this property tax rabbit hole in this video because things vary so much based on location. But if you have more detailed questions, especially about specific locations, call us. I'm happy to talk about it further, but it's better to talk specifically rather than in general. All right, number 2, and this is something that I do hear people complain about fairly often, but it's a little bit surprising, is mountains or lack thereof. Now, Southwest Florida specifically, but really all of Florida is generally pretty darn flat. I've heard a joke that I've been hearing for as long as I've lived here, that is, if you cut down the trees in Florida, you can see for miles. And that's pretty much the reality of it. There are no hills, there are no mountains, there is just flat. The highest point in many towns is the landfill. If you want mountains, if you like terrain variation and rock climbing, hiking through the mountains or things like that, Southwest Florida is definitely not your spot. However, that does not mean that there are no outdoor activities. There are tons of them, and outdoor activities is one of the biggest reasons people do come to Southwest Florida. They just aren't mountainous outdoor activities. They're typically water-related outdoor activities because obviously Florida's a peninsula, remember, fingers sticking out in the middle of the water, and has lots of water, and in Southwest Florida we're right on the Gulf Coast, which many people prefer over the Atlantic due to the calmer and warmer waters. We've got fantastic water, beautiful beaches, tons of water sport type activities, boating, fishing, shelling, going to the beaches, jet skiing, kayaking, canoeing, paddleboarding, plus tons of barrier islands that you can go explore by boat. Lots of really cool water stuff to do. And there's both saltwater and freshwater things to do as well. So because there are lots of lakes and rivers all over the place, plus creeks, canals, puddles, even ditches, whatever type of water you want to play in, except waterfalls, because waters can't fall when the ground is flat, right? And then of course, Florida is known for having golf courses. Another joke, we have almost as many golf courses as we do gas stations. So golfing obviously is a huge activity here. And then also, if you're a little bit more country and a little less beach, there's a ton of horse property, a bit more inland, and there are other ways to play and have fun outdoors off-roading. It's not like the off-roading I grew up with in Arizona though. Instead of it being dry, dusty desert off-roading, this is wet, muddy swamp off-roading. That's right, there are actually things called swamp buggies to take you out and go play in the mud. People build them out of just about anything, including just scrap metal they have laying around, but many originally were trucks, jeeps, tractors, ATVs, whatever, and then they put these massive tractor-like off-road wheels and tires on them, and they go drive through the mud in the swamps. There are even big mud parks here in Florida, specifically designed for that, where they host weekend parties. You take your swamp buggy or your monster truck, you go camp in the park, and you just go off-roading the whole weekend. So maybe that's your jam. But either way, there are a ton of outdoor things to do. What do you think? Do you need the mountains? Or does mudding in the swamp or the beach sound more like your style? And last but not least, we have number one. And this is another one that has come up a lot lately, and it's walkability. It is the number one reason now why people opt out of Southwest Florida, or at least into these newer big master plan developments that many of our neighborhood tours, we're gonna link them here at the end. Most of Florida is laid out like one big giant flat suburb, nothing but single family homes on quarter-acre lots as far as the eye can see, and then an occasional public shopping center, a gas station here and there, and of course the golf courses. And for a long time, that's what people seemed to want when they came to Florida. There was really no plan for city centers or commercial spaces for businesses to service the residents that moved here. But now that the population has grown, people are realizing, and government officials are realizing, that those things really should have been planned for in the beginning, and since they were not, they now have to be retrofitted to make for functional living. And some developers have found it easier to just start from scratch with a whole new piece of land. For example, places like Lakewood Ranch, Welland Park, Babcock Ranch, or Ave Maria. These are all newer, basically towns born out of the desire to create a much more functional living environment by planning the entire development around thoughtful living from the beginning. These developments are fully walkable, as well as bikeable, and even mostly golf cart friendly. Now, all of this is designed to promote a healthier lifestyle, as well as making it easier and more functional to get around without having to always get in your car and drive 30 minutes like you have to in most Florida cities where they don't have the sidewalks or bike lanes and aren't golf cart friendly. So if walkability or a way to get around other than your car is important to you, most of Southwest Florida may not be for you, but I say most because we just talked about some areas where they are. But if those other things don't scare you off, call us because there are totally some areas that will fit. Or check out these other videos, like I said, to see some of them.